He called it just a formality when I signed the contract 18 years ago. Back then, we did not even have chairs that matched, and the air conditioning unit whined like a dying goat every time someone used the microwave. We were 5 people squeezed into a broom closet office above a payday loan place, 1 whiteboard, 3 space heaters, and 0 backup plans. But I had an idea, a real one, and in a world full of recycled pitches and Silicon Valley smoke, I had blueprints that actually worked. I still remember the smell of that place. Burnt instant coffee, electrical fire waiting to happen, and the sour musk of ambition soaked into old carpet. I built my first prototype in that hellhole, with parts scavenged off eBay and a soldering iron that shocked me every third use. But it worked. It worked. And that ugly little box turned into patent number 1. Then came patent number 2 and patent number 3. By year 6, I was up to 22 patents. All of them filed under the company's name with my name tagged as the original inventor. Of course, that detail would matter later. They gave me a title, eventually lead inventor. No office, no team, but a fancy plaque and enough freedom to keep doing what I did best. Build things that made money. And oh, did they make money. The licensing deals started small. 1 pharma lab here, 1 automation firm there. Soon the big boys came sniffing, defense contracts, manufacturing giants, and Silicon Valley titans. By the 12th year, we had 3 floors downtown and policies longer than the Constitution. I stayed heads down, not caring for stock options or retreats. Just give me a lab, a budget, and time to build. And I did again and again. Patent 31 reduced assembly costs for our clients by 24%. Patent 35 improved safety compliance so dramatically, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration sent us a thank you letter. Patent 42. That one was the crown jewel, an adaptive process flow that basically let any manufacturer switch production lines on the fly without shutting down. That one alone secured $360 million in new contracts. The press called it revolutionary. I called it Tuesday. I was not flashy. I did not do interviews. But I was the engine. Everyone knew it from the quiet glances during earnings calls, and how the legal department kept my clauses ironclad when acquisitions circled. Without innovation, you were just burning investor money. And I was the fire starter. They built an empire on my patents, and I never once missed a filing deadline. Never once took a shortcut that would have risked a claim challenge. Everything I touched was locked down, watertight, and forward compatible. The technology worked, the contracts held, and the company thrived. I should have seen it coming. The shift, it always starts the same. Someone mentions scaling faster. Then the branding changes. New logo, new slogan, new leadership vision. Old faces disappear. Board meetings get longer. Legal reviews get slower. And somewhere in all of that noise, they forget or pretend to forget who built the damn engine that is still keeping the lights on. But in those early days before the knives came out, I was proud. Proud of the work. Proud of the team we had built. Proud that something I created in a rented storage unit was now keeping thousands of people employed. I had no reason to doubt them. I was not chasing a title. I was not trying to own the company. I just wanted to build things that mattered and be left the hell alone. Turns out, that was my first mistake. I knew something was off the moment I saw his shoes polished like a casket lid and twice as shiny, stepping off that private elevator like he owned the oxygen in the building. Everyone stood when he walked in except me, not out of protest. I was just busy trying to stop one of our test rigs from overheating. You know, actually doing something useful. He introduced himself with that slippery, rehearsed kind of charm that leaves your skin feeling sticky even hours later. "Call me Julian," he said, like we were going to be brothers, like 18 years of blood. Patents and busted knuckles could be reset with a LinkedIn handshake and a first-name policy. Julian Cole was an acquisition hire dragged in by the new parent company to streamline innovation and enhance scalability. Translation: make things cheaper, faster, and shinier so some hedge fund could slap it in a deck and milk the valuation. He had a background in sales, which meant he knew how to talk like he knew what he was doing. Problem was, he did not. His resume was stacked with buzzwords and bankruptcies. The kind of guy who would trademark the phrase thought architecture and call it a deliverable. Still, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. First week, he toured the labs, nodded like a bobblehead, asked weird questions like, Can we make this more viral about a torque stabilizer? I laughed thinking he was joking. He was not. Week 2, I noticed something else. Meetings started popping up on the calendar without my name on them. Strategy syncs, product rollouts, budget reviews. I would email to clarify and get polite brush-offs. Not essential this time, Devin, but we will loop you in later. Later never came. My loyalty to the company did not just cost me my free time and my weekends. It cost me moments of my life that I can never get back. 3 years ago, my younger sister, Clara Foster, had to undergo a massive 6-hour spinal surgery after a terrible car accident. I had promised her that I would be sitting in the recovery room, holding her hand when she woke up, but as they were wheeling her into the operating room, my phone rang. It was the director of operations, yelling at me through the receiver. A minor temperature deviation on a $30 million shipment of critical medication in Munich was threatening to trigger a complete regulatory recall. He screamed that if I did not resolve the clearance error within 30 minutes, the company would face ruin and it would be entirely my fault. Instead of sitting in the hospital waiting room near my sister, I spent 4 hours in the cold hospital parking lot, frantically typing on my laptop to clear the shipment. When my sister finally woke up in recovery, she was completely alone. I felt a deep, heavy pit of guilt in my stomach that afternoon, realizing that I had allowed a heartless corporation to dictate my family priorities. Yet, the pressure was constant, and the fear of losing everything I had built kept me chained to my keyboard. I remembered other holidays lost to their neglect. One Christmas Eve, when the main routing servers collapsed at 2 in the morning, I sat at my kitchen table for hours in the dark, manually entering compliance codes to save a cargo of refrigerated medicines trapped in Rotterdam. My family celebrated in the next room while I stared at a blinking cursor, keeping the company afloat. That was the heavy tax they extracted from my personal life. Every time I brought up my salary, my promised partnership, or my equity shares, the executives would pat my shoulder and repeat the same empty phrase. "We are almost there, Devin. Just push through one more quarter and we will take care of you." I let myself believe those lies because I fell for the myth of corporate meritocracy. I honestly believed that hard work, technical excellence, and constant personal sacrifice would eventually force them to show me the respect and compensation I had earned. What I did not see until it was almost too late was that corporate executives do not reward sacrifice. They weaponize it against you. They did not view me as a partner building a business. They saw me as a quiet, reliable pack mule who would carry their heavy loads forever without ever demanding his fair share of the harvest. But while they saw cheap labor, I was quietly holding the legal keys to their entire empire. To Julian Cole and the board, our global shipping network was just a collection of pretty lines on a digital map. They saw green delivery charts, growing client numbers, and rising profit margins. They had absolutely no understanding of the complex legal architecture that kept those machines moving. Over 18 years of endless work, I had personally built the system that managed temperature tracking, customs documents, and strict international clearances across 62 major global trade hubs. Whether our cargo was moving through Rotterdam, London, or Tokyo, every single container of temperature-sensitive drugs had to meet strict international standards. Customs officials and foreign regulatory agencies do not accept corporate rubber stamps. By strict federal and international maritime law, every shipment must carry the active, verified digital signature of a certified compliance officer. When the company first expanded the division, the founder refused to pay the high cost of keeping an outside compliance firm on retainer, which would have cost over $500,000 every year. To save that money, corporate legal registered my personal professional license as the official legal compliance anchor. My private cryptographic security key was hard-coded directly into the main database. Every time a shipment landed at a destination port, the system executed a background security check, verified my active credentials, and generated an encrypted digital seal that cleared the cargo. What Julian Cole never understood was that I was not just running a software program. I was the legal foundation of the entire company. Over those 18 years, I also built deep, trust-based relationships with customs directors and port authorities around the world. These high-level officials did not know Julian Cole, and they did not care about the parent company. They knew Devin Foster. They trusted my files because my compliance record was absolutely spotless, and they would often fast-track our shipments past long customs holds based on my personal word. To my bosses, this smooth operation looked like simple magic. They saw millions of dollars in cargo-clear European ports in 20 minutes, and they assumed our cheap software did all the work. They had no idea that behind every quick clearance was my manual check, my personal license on the line, and my phone ringing at 3 in the morning to assure a worried customs director in Germany that the paperwork was correct. They treated a highly complex legal infrastructure as if it were a free utility. They truly believed that if I walked away, the computer would just keep printing green lights forever. What Julian Cole and the board did not know was how our security system was actually programmed to run. The automated clearance server did not operate on a permanent corporate license. It required a live security check with my active user credentials every single hour. Per international regulatory rules, if a certified officer account is deactivated, the dynamic security keys instantly expire. The logistics portal is hard-coded to prevent uncertified companies from moving sensitive pharmaceutical products across international borders without certified human oversight. Without an active, verified compliance officer attached to the system, the automated network triggers an immediate total freeze. Across all 62 international transit hubs, the local port computers would receive an automated warning flag indicating an uncertified manifest. The security program would lock down every moving container on the spot. Julian thought his $400 million logistics pipeline belonged entirely to the company. He never realized the entire operation rested on the shoulders of one man whose contract he was about to destroy. The final breaking point came during the quarterly board meeting. Julian Cole did not just want to remove me, he wanted an audience. The room was prepped like a stage, polished walnut table, fresh bottled water, and nameplates like we were hosting a corporate séance. The board was there, scattered in their ergonomic chairs, half of them on tablets, the other half checking stock tickers on their phones. Julian stood at the head of the table in a $2,000 suit, grinning like a ringmaster. Before we dive into third quarter projections, he said, flipping through a folder with theatrical precision, there is a small bit of legacy housekeeping we need to address. He reached under the table and pulled out my original paper contract. My contract, signed 18 years ago when we did not have a legal department and had to use a template pulled off a business law blog. I recognized the coffee stain on the bottom corner. This is what loyalty is worth, he announced, holding the contract up like a dead rat. Then he shredded it. A paper shredder was plugged into the wall behind him, and he fed it in, looking me dead in the eye the entire time. Every few seconds he would pause, tilt his head, then continue feeding the document to its death. You have had a good run, Devin, he said, voice syrupy with condescension. But let us be honest, research and development needs fresh energy. New blood. People who understand today's pace, not someone coasting off yesterday's ideas. The blades whirred, the paper disappeared, and the room went quiet. We appreciate your legacy contributions, he added, using air quotes, but moving forward, your services are no longer required. There it was, fired, no meeting, no heads up, just death by shredder delivered with a smirk. The board did not clap, but some of them chuckled. I did not move, I did not speak, I just nodded once, slow and deliberate. Humiliation soaked into the pores of that room, but it did not touch me. What Julian did not know, what not a single soul in that boardroom realized, was that the paper he just destroyed was a duplicate. The real contract, the one with the clause, lived elsewhere. It started in year 3, back when the company was too small to afford an in-house lawyer. We had just landed our first real contract, but it came with a stipulation, proof of clear ownership. That forced us to look under the hood, and we found vague language. That was when I realized I needed to armor up. I hired my own lawyer out of pocket. His name was Silas Finch, and he looked like a retired boxer in a thrift store blazer. Bald, quiet, always smelling of mint gum and cold printer toner. But the man was a killer. We met in a diner once a week, ordered the same greasy hash browns, and worked through every clause. We rewrote my contract. One clause, paragraph 7, Subsection C, labeled IP reversion in event of breach, became the sword I would spend the next decade quietly sharpening. Silas explained it like this: if they fire you clean, they keep the goods. But if they breach the terms, any terms, including termination without the contractually required 90-day notice and due process, everything you created reverts back to you. All patents, all licenses, all proprietary derivatives. We did not just put it in writing. We filed it through a third-party digital notary system using blockchain timestamping, immutable, uneditable. It lived on 4 servers, 3 continents, and 2 offline backup drives inside a fireproof safe at Silas's house. Over the years, they pushed updated employee agreements, but I never signed. My original contract remained untouched. Legal knew better than to poke that bear. And Julian, bless his glossy-headed ego, had just turned a symbolic firing into a legal landmine by publicly shredding the contract while announcing I was fired without notice. Breach of contract, documented, witnessed. I called Silas that night, told him what happened. He did not say a word at first, just sipped his coffee, then chuckled. "All right," he said, "let us open the vault." Next morning, Silas Finch filed the breach notice with a certified timestamp. Attached were the original digitally signed contract, the notarized reversion clause, and a side-by-side compliance audit showing they had nuked the bridge. We did not send it to Julian Cole. Not yet. We sent it to legal, their internal team first, just to watch the panic bloom. Then we copy-filed their outside counsel, Felix Thorne, senior partner, at a firm billing $1,500 an hour. It took less than 24 hours for them to reply. Their tone was not aggressive, it was nervous. They asked for a meeting. Silas replied with a single PDF highlighting paragraph 7, subsection C. In the event of termination deemed in breach of contract, all registered patents credited to the original inventor shall revert to said inventor with full rights of use, licensing, and transfer without financial obligation to the former employer. Underneath was the blockchain signature. Stunned silence followed. They had not just fired me, they had blown out the foundation of the company's entire intellectual property portfolio. And me, I did not gloat. I just went for a walk. The air smelled of rain and overdue consequences. They thought they could bluff it out. 3 days after Silas filed the breach notice, the company released a press statement about leadership evolution. Not a word about patents. But inside, chaos was already simmering. The production floor ran on software modules tied directly to my systems. Process 42, the modular manufacturing integration, was locked behind an authorization key that only I held. They had never rotated it because no one thought I would leave. They tried bypassing it, but the patch failed and triggered a safety lockout. One line halted for 8 hours. 8 hours at $32,000 an hour. That got the board's attention. Silas and I met at our usual corner booth that Thursday. The scent of burnt hash browns and cheap coffee was comforting, a stark contrast to the sterile, panicked emails flying between the corporate servers. Silas leaned back, adjusting his worn blazer, and chuckled. "Devin, they are running out of air," he said, tap dancing on a live wire and hoping it does not spark. "We just need to let the voltage build." I agreed. I was in no rush. For years, they had set the deadlines, and I had run myself ragged to meet them. Now, the roles were reversed. They were the ones watching the clock, counting the thousands of dollars they lost every hour. The lines remained locked down. My old contacts at the Rotterdam port texted me privately, confirming that the German shipments were still sitting in high-security warehouses, accumulating custom storage fees by the minute. The company was bleeding credibility along with cash, and every phone call Silas received from Felix Thorne sounded more desperate than the last. We knew they were trying to draft some sort of settlement that would let them keep the patents under a licensing loop. But Silas was not having it. "We hold the deed, Devin," he reminded me. "They either buy back the rights on your terms, or they watch their entire supply chain rot." Then came the licensing audits. Our biggest partner, Munich Automation Group, flagged a clause in their contract stating they required ongoing certification from the original patent holder to continue manufacturing. No certification, no compliance. No compliance, no shipment. Their legal team fired off an email requesting confirmation. That email came to me, not the company. I did not answer. Julian Cole kept strutting through all-hands meetings, talking about synergies no one understood. but engineers were texting me late at night, asking if it was true I was gone. Legal tried to respond to our notice with vague language. We dispute the interpretation of the clause. Silas sent a second message. This time, we attached not just the contract, but the metadata from the blockchain notarization, a list of the 42 patents in question, and a reminder that public misrepresentation of intellectual property could trigger regulatory review. We added a footnote suggesting we had already had preliminary conversations with federal compliance auditors. That was when the emails stopped. Outwardly, they pretended nothing had changed. But internally, the storm was pressurizing. I could smell the nervous sweat of a sinking ship, and just like blood in the water, it drew the sharks. A manufacturing rival invited me to grab lunch. A private equity firm called Silas directly, asking if the patents were encumbered. A well-funded tech startup offered me a consulting role with 7 zeros if I brought my inventions with me. The scent of weakness was airborne. I let the calls roll to voicemail. Every day they did not respond, I gained leverage. Every hour of downtime, every client email asking who owned the tech widened the crack in their foundation. They thought I would come crawling back for a settlement. I was building a war chest. One of their vice presidents finally called me, wanting clarity on the dispute. I told him to direct all inquiries to Silas Finch, then asked how his son's baseball game went, just to remind him I remembered the people behind the machines. He sounded tired, really tired. I almost felt bad. Almost, because they thought they could fire the architect and still live in the house rent-free. But what they had not realized yet was that the deed was in my name, and every step they took now was trespassing. It hit their inboxes at 9:01 in the morning on a Monday. Subject line: Notice of contractual breach and activation of patent reversion clause. Silas's email was clean, surgical, a full PDF package, the breach summary, the notarized contract with blockchain verification, and a final page listing all 42 patents with their registration numbers and market valuations. It was a digital guillotine. Julian Cole's reply came 34 minutes later. I am not sure what fantasy world you think this clause operates in, but your client was an at-will employee and was terminated in accordance with internal procedures. We will not be intimidated. This matter is closed. I read it while sipping my second coffee, smiled. Silas did not respond. Instead, he copied Felix Thorne, their outside counsel. That changed everything. Outside counsel handles tech lawsuits large enough to move stock prices. They do not waste time because their clock is running and they know where the tripwires are buried. 4 hours later, we got a call from Felix Thorne. His voice was clipped. I have reviewed the materials, he said. The clause appears enforceable. Silas did not gloat, just said, yes, it does. There was a pause. This was not disclosed during due diligence, Thorne muttered. I imagined Julian standing in his corner office, laughing off the whole thing until Thorne forwarded him the contract. I know the moment he clicked the PDF and read paragraph 7, subsection C. All patents revert to the original inventor. There it was, cold, clear law. We did not hear from Julian directly after that, but emails from legal took on a new tone. Fewer adjectives, more questions. They wanted to schedule a mutual resolution session. Too late. By the end of the week, the company issued a temporary operational pause on 3 production lines. Munich Automation Group pulled back on their fourth quarter order. Internal Slack messages leaked to me showed engineers panicking, asking why systems were inaccessible, why legal was locking down internal environments, why a compliance team was reviewing all patent logs. One message read, "Does this mean we do not own the tech?" Bingo. Julian tried to save face in the next town hall. Some former employees are making exaggerated claims, he said. We are fully in control of our intellectual property. His voice cracked. The question and answer session was abruptly cut short. One engineer I mentored messaged me afterward. He is sweating, like actually sweating. Silas laughed when I told him. It was beautiful. We scheduled the meeting. I did not wear a suit. I figured if they were going to see the ghost of their mistakes, I might as well look like myself. Dark jeans, work boots, a button-down shirt that smelled of solder and coffee. I carried a leather folio with 42 patents, 6 offers, and a licensing contract they were going to sign or not. Either way, I would win. The receptionist froze when I walked in. I gave her a polite nod and kept walking. The boardroom was smaller than I remembered. Corporate spaces shrink once you stop needing their approval. Julian Cole was there, looking like he had not slept in 3 days. "Devon," he said, "let us clear the air." I did not sit, just placed the folio on the table and slid 2 documents forward. A licensing agreement and a statement of intent to transfer the portfolio. "Two paths," I said. "You license the tech at my rates under my terms, or I accept one of the half-dozen offers on the table. Some from your competitors, some from private equity." The room went still. "We need time to review," a board member said. "You have had time," I cut in. "You had time when Julian shredded my contract like it was a joke. You had time when your lawyers got the reversion notice." I looked at Julian. "I do not blink." The CFO cleared her throat. "What is the exact figure?" I tapped the licensing agreement. $9 million up front. Annual license fee 20% of net profits derived from all products using the patents. Term is 6 years renewable. Any lapse in payment nullifies the agreement. Julian scoffed. "You are extorting us." "No," I said. "You are leasing what you do not own. The alternative is you explain to your shareholders why your core tech stack is controlled by a man you fired." He went pale. Even the board members who chuckled during my public execution were staring at the papers like they might combust. They recessed for 52 minutes. When the doors opened, they sent a young paralegal. She handed me a signed copy of the licensing agreement. All pages initialed, ink still drying, with a wire confirmation slip attached. $9 million, same-day transfer. I stared at it with a quiet exhale that had been building for 18 years. They built an empire on my mind, and now they were writing checks just to keep the gears turning. Silas and I celebrated with hash browns at our diner. By sunset, the money was in my account. I packed a bag and drove north. The house was waiting, glass front, cedar beams, deck stretching over the lake in Denver. No noise, just the wind through the trees. I threw a folding chair on the deck, poured a drink, and sat down barefoot as the last light bled into the horizon. That moment was the reward. Ownership, freedom, no more stolen meetings. Just me, the patents under my name, and a company that paid me for the right to exist. Julian's name never came up again. I don't need revenge. I am the reminder, the one who walked in with a folio and walked out with the keys. I felt like the whole damn factory, and they will be paying rent for the rest of their lives.